Thank you very much for actually joining this conversation. Now, a bit about STEM. CARISTEM is a platform for individuals and organizations interested in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics within the Caribbean. And we are aiming to provide relevant articles and other resources to aid the development of STEM areas in the Caribbean. So if you take anything away from today, it's that CARISTEM is about sort of trying to promote the development of STEM in the Caribbean. The conversation today is how STEM is applied to real world problems in the Caribbean. And what I'm hoping for is that we could have a discussion around how STEM has been used to resolve real world Caribbean problems in the past, and going forward, how we're looking at sort of how STEM could be applied to resolve real world problems in the future. Experiences of STEM in the Caribbean is mainly from the engineering side. My background was more sort of engineering focused, and some of the sort of experience I gained was on projects working in the Caribbean. So on like the Roseau Dam, a number of sort of roads, the Castries to or cul-de-sac to Soufriere highway project, and all of these sort of various analyses that was involved in this kind of work, including some geotechnical work as part of the sort of the new sort of, I think it's called the Millennium Highway.
Nikki Duciel, I live here in Belgium, and yeah, so thanks for the invitation, first of all, Fred. So I think this initiative is great, and we can see how, as we have built our experiences and so on over the years, how we can help bring that to a wider audience and maybe have an impact. I have to admit that I have, when I left the Caribbean, so I left St. Lucia back in 86 or 87, something like this, I did not have I haven't gone back and I haven't worked on any projects in the Caribbean. Yeah, I went in to study, and I basically went and I studied mathematical economics at university. So, econometrics and things like this. Then after I finished my master's, I never actually went and worked in that field. So my experience is very limited in working and contributing to the Caribbean and using the skills and what I've learned. However, maybe in this forum, I can find a way to contribute.
Thank you very much for that contribution. I think that, most of us who are part of the CARISTEM sort of, group at the moment are kind of working towards sort of, supporting STEM in whatever way we can. So in fact, we would welcome the support that possibly, and I'm keen in terms of, how you could give support to that cause.
I would like to recognize Professor Clement Imbert, who has joined us. Welcome, Professor Imbert. Professor Imbert has, of course, a long and distinguished career in STEM, principally in the area, but not only in the area of academia. So welcome, Professor.
I guess what I'd like to ask at this point is, how do we see current developments in the Caribbean, and where do we see the most space that we could people in the Caribbean could actually contribute to this development? Does anybody have any ideas on this?
If I may, certainly we have in the Caribbean a long history of work with technology and contribution to technology. We typically have not recognized it as our populations have not recognized the extent to which we in fact have interacted with and mastered technology. But it is a reality that informs a lot of our economic activity, and also major work that has been done in the areas specifically of agriculture, medicine, and so forth. So STEM has always been with us, but it has never had the level of prominence in the minds of the population. One of the consequences of this is that the perception exists that there is none here. And that has implications both for people choosing career paths, but also belief in what opportunities there are for economic activity. And thirdly, with regard to our capacity to address our own problems. So one of the things I think that we need to look at, especially in a world where we are faced with an increasing number of new challenges, and also where we are all in different ways called upon to diversify our economies away from what have previously been our main activities, whether it be tourism or agriculture or energy, as in Trinidad. These place a serious imperative on us to look seriously at the role that STEM can play in furthering these initiatives. And I think these are some of the things that make the interest in STEM and conversations like the one we're having this evening very timely and very topical.
Sorry, I couldn't. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you very clearly, Jackie. Thanks for that, Wayne. We'll come back to that shortly. But yes, Jackie, you're live.
My apologies. I joined a little late, so I was just trying to, and my connection wasn't very good. In my area, I work in IT and I taught, and my interest right now in St. Lucia in particular is that I think that, you know, because of our small land mass, we cannot really compete in agriculture, and tourism is what we're depending on. And I think that technology and math and IT in particular is something that we can develop in the Caribbean or in St. Lucia and in the education within the education system from early, so that we can get our kids to, you know, become involved in software development and things like that, because I think that we are way behind. CXC is way behind in terms of technology and what it teaches for CXC in IT. We wait until they're in Form 4 and so on to teach. So I don't know if STEM is one of those, can help in that way, in that to get our school system to start bringing in technology from early, you know, using computers and learning technology from very early on, and not in Form 4 and Form 5. So I don't know if you'll get involved in that sense.
Well, I personally believe that it's never too early to get children involved in technology, engineering, STEM, maths. So I think even at the age of 4 or 5, that's not too early. As a group, I would say that CARISTEM, the intention is to work at all the levels. That means at primary school, secondary school, tertiary, and with adults and professionals. Yes? I guess for us, it's to encourage not only the members of CARISTEM, but people within these areas to work and to see how we could help. One of the reasons for today, I guess, would be to find out what areas people think require input and how. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
So when you say,
I'm sorry, Nick, sorry, go on.
So what would you think would be an ideal way to get children involved at primary school, would you say?
Through the government, I think, because I myself, you know, looking at going into education, but education in a private sense, and because Because I think, for the same reasons, I work in technology, and I noticed that, you know, with my son who's in Form 5 and my daughter who entered the university, we're way too far behind. So by the time they go to university, the kids in university, their level of IT is way higher, and therefore, you know, these kids are starting from you know, they're too far behind. So I think our education system with the government really is where it needs to start, and we need to try to make government aware of, I don't know, maybe they probably are aware, but they need to realize that we have to bring it to a different level. Even CXC, since we still have, our education system is still based on CSEC, we need to have CXC to realize that the rest of the world in technology and IT, from high school, from early on in high school and before then, they're doing programming, and they're using technology, and they're you know, it's part of their daily use. Whereas our kids in primary school don't even have a laptop, secondary school either. And we need to you know, really go into that, because our we have the intelligence, we have the you know, it's just a matter of training and developing our students in that direction. So I really think maybe it's at CXC level, and then at the government level, in terms of the Ministry of Education and so on. And also to get the private sector involved, because persons like myself who you know, left teaching because I was interested in IT, and you know, teaching, there wasn't much direction to, you know, much growth in St. Lucia for teaching, but still have a passion. I think that our kids are being left behind, and we need to get our education level, our education system to catch up, so that we can compete on a global scale. So, you know, we have a few people in St. Lucia who are doing apps and so on, but that's not enough. You know, if all our kids were doing technology from primary school, you know, we'll be able to compete, because you know, you're dealing with people's natural ability to mathematical and you know, cognitive abilities.
Yeah. I'd like to maybe just share some thoughts as I was listening to all of you, and so there are a couple of things that stuck out here, and I'm thinking this is great. When I think of my kids, so I have 3 kids. My daughter, she's 8 years, well, no, when she was 9 years old, so she was in, I don't know what year in primary school, but she was 9 years old, and they were already teaching her in the primary school, like basic programming, you know, with some robot and they're playing. Now, I will admit that, yes, here in Belgium, okay, the school system, they have resources and they can do that. But these kids will grow up, and as Jackie rightly said, they will go into university, they will go into the workforce already with a head start against the kids, maybe in St. Lucia, for example, or in the Caribbean, where there isn't that investment. But that's just confirms what Jackie's saying. But one thing I was thinking of is that how, and I think someone mentioned it earlier, as we grow up in schools in the Caribbean, do we know what the opportunities are if we go down the route of technology? For example, if we go into computer, if we start doing mathematics or other sciences and so on, right? So that's the first thing. So is there the awareness about what the opportunities are and the benefits are and how fulfilled we can be? And secondly, is there sufficient, let's say, nurturing of curiosity of the young kids to explore other areas? And I think here as well, maybe STEM can encourage that part where we foster the curiosity of the kids, so that they grow up not just waiting that they're handed something, but they go and they start searching themselves. Because to be honest, and I really saw it with, now we have the pandemic, so my kids were at home on the computer doing the remote classes. When they start going on Google, they start doing this, that, and the other. And my daughter, my oldest daughter, she's a fan of Japanese stuff. She started going and started learning Japanese words. Okay, I think that's a bit strange, but I want to say here that the technology exists today for kids sitting anywhere in the world with an internet connection, as long as the government doesn't block it, to find, there's a wealth of resources out there that can help them to grow. And by fostering the curiosity of the kids, that can help drive the need, or let's say drive or push the momentum for more people to go into the sciences.
Can I jump in at this point?
I think it's very appropriate that our discussion has revolved so far around education. We have among us a seasoned educator in Professor Clement Imbere, who is Emeritus Professor of Mechanical Engineering at UWI. He is Deputy Chairman of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, who has had extensive experience and has contributed, I am sure, to the development of some of us here. I would like to welcome Professor Imbere and to invite him to share some of his thoughts with us based on this extensive experience he has had of STEM in the region. Professor Imbere, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Wayne. At that meeting, of course, a decision was taken, and the decision was taken before by the Prime Minister that classes will be purely online this semester. Now, the curious thing is that all the SBAs and all the practicals, including the SBAs, have been pushed back to the beginning of the year, but we are not sure if that will happen at the beginning of the year. And one of the very impactful and encouraging aspects of STEM is to actually get people involved in hands-on work. The IEEE, that is the IEEE, sorry, not IEEE, IEEE, that's the Institution of Electrical and Electronic Engineers based in the United States, which is an international organization. They have a number of programs, and these programs all involve hands-on work at various levels, building various artifacts, and then you get building a robot and so on. Now, the fact is that the school children are not going to be involved, not in school, and it's going to be impractical to have them do it at home at this point, be involved in practical work. So, however, because they'll be using some sort of device, a laptop or what have you, the phone even, a tablet, whatever, the fact that they will have to be using the technology to get their classes, it's an opportune time to introduce them more into the technology. I heard a former speaker talk about Googling and so on. But one of the things we'll have to do is to get them to use as many simulation exercises as possible. Now, there are many laboratories that are done purely on the computer by simulating what is happening. You can't fully get the same experience. You can't do a titration in chemistry on the computer by pouring. You have to pour things into a pipette and so on and so on. But what we need to do is to get them involved at this time where they can't do any hands-on things supervised at school, is to do as many simulations as possible so they can see and feel some of these experiments and some of these projects. The fundamental thing, however, is, as the lady who is the former teacher was saying, we have to get to the Ministry of Education, we have to get a CXC to not only ensure that we have the most up-to-date technology in these schools, but to start earlier. Now, because everything is going to be online from, they were even discussing how you're going to have the early childhood children on the computer, because nobody is allowed this semester, at least this term, up until January, to be in class. Some teachers will be allowed to be in class if they don't have devices. There's an issue, of course, of connectivity, and they have to talk to the providers to provide much more connectivity in the country. And many students will not have devices, they'll be at a disadvantage. But the fact of the matter is that everything is going to be online for the next couple of months and probably a little longer than that. So it's an opportunity for us to talk to the Ministry of Education to tell them that we need to go beyond just using the device to get classes and to send back an assignment or homework or whatever. And as I say, at this point, to get into simulation exercises. So somebody will have to do the research of finding out what are the projects, but particularly the exercises, laboratory exercises, if you like, that are already done as a simulated experiment, for us to try to get that into the school system. There are some very progressive schools, and they will drive the process once they are informed and apprised of what is there. They probably don't have the time right now battling with just trying to get things organized to start school in the 1st of September, because the decision was to start on the 1st of September. The first week or two will be for planning and organizing and so on, and then they hit the road with the teaching and learning. Now, I have a connection to the Ministry of Education, but I'm not as techie and tech savvy as many of you.
Professor, thank you very much for your contribution. As I was saying, I think to sum up, I think what you were saying is that we need to look at the opportunity that the sort of situation that we're in presents to us, in terms of sort of having to think of sort of new sort of ways of educating young people, and not just sort of at education at sort of university level or college level, but also very young children of primary school age. And I think that's something that Mickey, you touched on as well, in terms of the way sort of kids are sort of educated in Belgium, and from very early on they're introduced to some of these sort of technologies, and so in a way they grow up sort of being very familiar with these sort of technologies, so that it becomes very much part of their sort of normal experience. So that, a very good point there. I just want to sort of also acknowledge that Joe makes a point as well about sort of basically what Joe says is that communication is key, and I think that's in response to Mickey's contribution, and also Professor Mbe's contribution as well. So what Joe is saying is, if people are not aware of the real world benefits of STEM in their daily lives, so I guess in a way from very early on, kids need to be taught to think about sort of how STEM applies in their daily lives. And she continues to say they will not begin to see the opportunities that it presents for their futures. And then the second point that Joe makes is that there is a real opportunity for CARISTEM to be disruptive innovators in this field. And it takes time to convince governments to change and develop their curriculums away from the safety of what they know. If there were STEM programs taking place outside of the curriculum, which demonstrated the benefits of greater STEM inclusion in the curriculum, it will create sufficient momentum for the changes to take place. So I think it is, I guess from what Joe is saying, it's about sort of embedding this within the society itself from very early on, and that's the point that sort of chimes with your point, Mickey, and also the point that Jackie makes as well, about sort of needing to sort of introduce more technology within the education sort of system in the Caribbean. Okay, I'll shut up now, and I think Mickey, you want to make another point on this? Is it?
No. It's, just to reinforce, or let's say reinforce what Joe was making in the summary. So thanks for the summary, Fred. But saying that with all of this, it's not. We're talking about it, and we can see the vision because we've gone through and we know what this is. But there is a real cost associated with this, and I want to make this. So just to give you an example, my two daughters are now in secondary school, and they have, as part of their curriculum, a whole Office 365 given by the school. Okay, so the Microsoft Office 365 package. They we are told they need to have a PC and so on. Now, even that was even before COVID. Now that they have, and they start using things like Teams, they use Power Apps, but all of this, I mean, just think about how much the license costs, and your school is giving that to you. So it's being funded by the government or something like this. So with all of these things, and that's just Office. If you have to think of all the other tools and infrastructure that needs to be put in place for this, there is a real cost. So it really goes to the point where I think Joe was mentioning that maybe it needs to be demonstrated the benefits of that outside of the curriculum, so that it's picked up then by the governments, institutions, and so on to say, hey, let's go and fund this because it's ready. Because I think if we go in and the government looks at the business case and says, hey, I need to invest, I don't know, let's say 500,000 a year per school or per secondary school to get everybody with a PC and so on and so forth. You know, they might say, well, what's the business case? However, you know, if we, and a case in point is, let's look at how India as a country evolved and became one of the leaders in information technology. But we're just talking about the information, but you know, it could be a host of other areas. It could be into medicine, into you know, other sciences as well.
No, actually, very valid contributions, and I would say very quickly that Joe has also made other points, sort of you know, reinforcing the points that you make about sort of, and Joe's actually sort of typing very quickly here. Let me see what she said. So infrastructure is key, and that takes both money and reprioritization, which is basically what you know you've kind of mentioned. And then you know, do we know if any of the Caribbean governments have approached Microsoft, for example, or Lenovo or Dell? Or some of these corporations, you know, who I guess would, you know, want to demonstrate their social responsibility, you know, to be able to give some kind of, you know, I guess maybe sort of, you know, tax, maybe government sort of giving tax relief, or is there sort of like, have people looked at this sort of problem holistically and started to think about how to resolve them? So I think that's a very valid question. So sorry, is there anybody else on the line, on the call, who wants to make a contribution, who has a burning question, or
Yes, I wanted to say a couple of things. Firstly, the current situation, the discussion around education, I think, has been very, very interesting. I think there are two particular aspects that we can consider, or a few particular aspects that we can consider. First is, of course, that STEM provides us with valuable tools to facilitate education, not just in the constrained circumstances that we currently have. But one of the problems that I see in Caribbean education is that the quality of education, certainly the quality of education outcomes in the region, is highly uneven. And certainly information technology provides a set of tools that can be used to improve the opportunities of those countries and those schools whose outcomes are not as good as others, to raise their standard and provide their students with more opportunities, and in some cases to provide them with opportunities that are economically difficult to provide in their particular circumstances. Another key point is that through education, we can raise in the minds, especially of young children, but certainly throughout the whole education spectrum, the question of where these tools have come from, and start to awaken in them the notion that they can actually create these tools. They don't just have to be the users of tools. And that applies equally to the teachers, who can see in the technology, and this is again specifically information technology, the capacity to create tools for their students, not just to look around and see what somebody else has created. And this this view of us as
Yeah.
creators of technology rather than just users of technology provides a very valuable perspective from which to move forward in the world as we seek to take advantage of technology-based opportunities.
Yeah.
So as they say, a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. And the current crisis certainly provides us with an opportunity to open this kind of discussion.
Yeah.
Both those threads, I think, are particularly relevant to us.
And that's also echoing the point I think that Joe and Mickey and Jackie, you know, and Professor Ember is making. It's about sort of embedding this within the culture. It's you know, making sure that people understand, especially young children growing up, that there is a clear link between you know, a problem and sort of finding, you know, and finding practical solutions or application of STEM. So in fact, in a way, it sort of, you know, creates this mindset, you know, that young kids are sort of in a, you know, constantly thinking, well, how to resolve the problems that we're currently dealing with through finding solutions, you know, drawing on their knowledge of STEM. So I think that's kind of a point that you and others are making. I think Joe has put some other thoughts in there. I'll have a read of them. Do we have any thoughts from Winston, who is on the line at the moment? Sorry, welcome, Winston. I don't think I've officially welcomed you. I see Valerie and Lyndon on the line as well, so acknowledging you as well. Feel free to make contributions. If you can raise your hand or sort of your comments or your questions in the chat. Nick, I think
It looks like Nicholas is talking.
Yeah, Nick, I can see you talking, but I can't hear you. No, I still can't hear you, Nick.
Can't hear you now.
Welcome, Bill. Okay, I'm going to sort of just, I think Joe sort of, what other points does she make? Yeah, people are living longer, the workforce will need to keep up or they will be left behind. And I think she talks about the sort of circular economy mindset as well. And earlier today, we were talking about, you know, the knowledge economy and the potential that, you know, within, you know, Caribbean islands to sort of look at their economies in a sort of post-COVID world. And I think the sort of, you know, focus that we've had on tourism, for example, we may sort of shift our focus from there and start thinking about sort of other you know, potential you know, economic sectors as well that we could develop. And some of these would be done through, like, you know, the stimulation of STEM within the Caribbean context. And we were talking about sort of possible you know, things that it could be applied to. For example, we talked about even something as minor as, for example, sunscreen. You know, that lots of people, you know, come on holiday with, and you know, come on holiday and would be needing, but the sort of, you know, technology, the knowledge that would be needed to develop, for example, sunscreen within the Caribbean, manufacture sunscreen, could be something that we, you know, we develop, we teach within the Caribbean. And there are other applications as well. I mean, we import a lot of motor vehicles, for example. Sorry, Wayne, acknowledging you.
Yes, the point you make on sunscreen is actually a very interesting one, because there's also another very important dimension of sunscreen, which is the environmental impact on marine systems of certain sunscreens that people use.
Fair point.
And that is another dimension of which a STEM awareness an important manifestation of a STEM awareness. One of the challenges I think STEM faces is that science and technology, many of us I see here are engineers, and we know that engineering is all around us. But many people in the society don't recognize this, and they view STEM as something that is remote from their daily existence, whereas we know that it is inseparable from your daily existence. And more so when you look at STEM in its full breadth, encompassing the medical sciences, agriculture, the biological sciences, and so forth. And we as island people are very dependent on different dimensions of our environment, whether it is meteorological events or our economic dependence on the support of our ecosystems for tourism, or our economic dependence associated with agriculture. So STEM is all around us, and our failure to come to grips with that fact and to recognize that this pervasive nature of STEM is in fact also an opportunity limits our the range of activities in which we can engage, the level of control we can exercise over our own destiny. I notice we've been joined by Lisa. Welcome, Lisa. And I'd also like to recognize Bill. Welcome, Bill.
Yes, also welcome to you both as well. And I acknowledge Lyndon as well earlier. Again, feel free to participate in the conversation. Just for the benefit of those who are just joining us, the conversation is about how we can apply or how STEM is applied in the Caribbean in the Caribbean context to deal with real world problems. So it's more about sort of bringing making STEM real to people, realizing how they use we use it in our everyday lives. And essentially that's the conversation. So if you do have examples of STEM that you would like to share, or thoughts on how we can develop STEM potentials to deal with future problems, feel free to make a contribution to the discussion.
Let me Mbe again.
Yep. Go on.
There's an organization in Trinidad called NIHERS. It stands for National Institute of Higher Education, Science and Technology. They got a nice grant of a little over $2 million US. I used US so everybody will understand. For a STEM, an extensive STEM program. Now they were gearing up to offer these this program to people at various venues. Now clearly that is not going to happen in the next 4 months. That they can't bring people to a venue and get them involved in STEM in wherever way, with some first sub fundamentals and then giving them projects to do and blah blah blah. So you're hearing me? Are you hearing me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Well, I lost you for a little bit, but you're back now.
Yeah, what happened is I get a million telephone calls. That happens to me. I get about 100 telephone calls a day, especially at this time when they know I'm not in a meeting normally or something. Anyway, so what I would need is some ideas from you guys as to how NIHERS can still use the funds that they got in order to engage students in STEM. Now, whether it's on a Saturday or whenever, but to engage them in STEM other than practical work and bringing them together in a place, because I think for the next couple of months, we won't be able to bring people together in any form or fashion, particularly for instructional purposes, like a school or a school-based thing. I mean, not that the STEM thing is a school, but so I would welcome ideas because it's something I want to approach NIHUS with. I have a good relationship with NIHUS also.
Can you
To approach NIHUS,
sorry, sorry, what's the name of the organization? Can you spell it? I'll make a note of it, and then I'm sure that
NIHERST.
NIHERST, yeah.
Yeah, and it's very
And we
good.
can,
Just put
yep,
NIHUS Trinidad and Tobago, and you'll see it.
okay.
So as I said, they had a STEM grant, but before they could get off the ground, they were looking to, acquire places where they could do it. One of them was in Port of Spain at the UDT campus, or the Jonas Donaldson Technical Institute, and so on, and other places. But before they could get you hearing me again?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
lost you again, but you're back. Yeah.
Yeah, people keep calling me, as I say. So COVID came, and therefore they can't go with the same modality. So it's to get some ideas, as I said, I'm repeating that from you guys, as to how we could have them still engage people in STEM in this new normal that is taking place, at least for the next probably 6 months or so. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I think we would need to. I don't know much about NIHUS, but I welcome any sort of contribution from those who do. I'm sure this is something that we could have a look at. Sort of, I would probably have to look it up myself, but I don't know if others know about NIHUS and whether or not we could make a comment on
people
this
from
now.
Trinidad will know it. People from NIHUS will know about Trinidad.
Yeah.
So the other thing is that that I'd like to say, I didn't know you had a CARISTEM organization or whatever, but seeing that CXC is a regional body, although they'll take recommendations from individual members, but I don't know what kind of influence CARISTEM has built with CXC, but I heard is it Jackie? I heard her say that CXC is a bit behind in what should be taught at that level. If that is shown very well, what it exists and what it should be and so on, that is another thing that could come from any country or from a regional body like CARISTEM. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much for that contribution. I don't know, Nick, do you want to say anything? Do we have Nick on the line? Have you resolved your sound issues?
I'm here. I think with regard to NIHUS, what we should do is get in touch with Professor Mbeh, and then we could take that further. I mean, it's always, as an organization, it's our goal to collaborate with people and try to help where we can. So that's one of the reasons why we're doing this now. So that's always a thing we can do.
So we're fastly approaching the time when we're meant to be ending, and I sort of want to stick very much to time. So go on, Nick.
There's one thing I like. We focus heavily on technology. I want to know what people think about the natural sciences, the environmental sciences. I mean, I know, as we pointed out, most of us are engineers, but as Jackie pointed out, one of the things I think we should be doing is getting students enthusiastic and people enthusiastic. And we don't only need people to create things. We need scientists. We need people to investigate. We need studies on our water, on our environment, in agriculture, in different areas. So how can we, as a group, how do we in the Caribbean push those other boundaries using STEM? What do you guys think?
Sorry,
Yeah,
go on.
go ahead. Yeah.
No, sorry, that was you, Professor Mbeh.
Yeah, I was saying, I have seen in agriculture, for example, I think one of the ways to to get the youth interested in agriculture, because that has been a problem, certainly in Trinidad and Tobago. But to get the youth interested, you have to come with high tech. And there are a lot of high tech things in agriculture today, the hydroponics and various related things that can be used to stimulate interest in agriculture, for example. You're not going to get the people interested in the old hoe and rake and so on. In any case, that is very uneconomical type agriculture. I have visited farms in the United States over the years, over the last 20 years. I'm amazed at the sort of mechanization and so on that they have for everything. But coming to the question of STEM and science, there are a lot of things that can be used to stimulate the interest of youth in agriculture. So that is something that, of course, has to be done outdoors. You can't do, well, it doesn't have to be outdoors. I mean, it has to be outside of the home. It's not, you don't do it on a computer, is what I mean. But you can do it. I have seen people take shipping containers and have a vertical farming kind of thing, and it seems to be a wondrous thing. So there is the thing in agriculture. The issue of the other sciences, yes, for sure. Again, with having people without blowing up themselves, getting kits and doing very simple, safe experiments at home, and so on. Because I think it's by feel and touch that you would attract the people, rather than, you know, and even mathematics has to be taught that way in this new normal. I don't think the straightforward chalk and talk is going to cut it at this point. Yeah.
No, and I think very much like CARI-STEM is about sort of, you know, trying to, you know, do things, however we're trying to take sort of action that could assist, that could sort of advance STEM development in the Caribbean. And this is very much, but this is very much what the conversation is about. How do we sort of, you know, move to take the next step in terms of being able to support that. I mean, obviously, you know, we would be sort of limited in terms of how much we can do, but it's very much the sort of aspiration, or the objective is to be able to support STEM in whatever little way. I know that we are close. Well, we are at our sort of, we've gone past our sort of finish time. Wayne has suggested that we can actually extend. Now, I'm acknowledging that some people are actually, like, Mickey in particular, it's very late in Belgium, and I don't know if you want to continue or if you want to drop off the call, because it's quite late for you. But, when are you suggesting that we do, what, another 10 minutes? Or I know Valerie wants to make a contribution, but so.
What I'm suggesting is that we just continue. And we can recognize that some people may need to leave, and they can, but I think there are some people who have joined us and have not yet had an opportunity to make a contribution, so it'd be useful to hear what they have to say. Clearly, we have indicated, identified that there's a lot of interest, and we need to capture these thoughts.
Absolutely. And I'll be saving some of the contributions in the chat as well, which actually sort of echoes some of the discussion that we've been having live as well. Can I just, so I know.
You can invite Valerie.
Yes, let's give me a second before, Mickey, do you need to leave now, I imagine?
No, I would just like to respond to Nicholas's his question, but I think we had some other folks, and then I will drop off afterwards. I just have some comments.
Yeah, fair point. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so Nick, your question was, okay, what about the other sciences and so on? And based on what I've seen and experienced, is that to get people interested in anything they do, it also means they need to have a vision as to what it is I'm going to do afterwards. So let's say, for example, someone grows up and he studies marine biology, or and okay, that's great. He gets a degree, maybe he goes on to do a PhD or something like this, but comes back and there's no opportunity for them, right? Basically, the next guy behind him is going to say, should I do this? Or should I go and do something else, right? And I think this whole question about how do we get people interested in some of these other sciences is as well giving them the vision as to what are the opportunities for you later, once you have completed your studies, what can you contribute to? How can you help solving problems that we are facing? Well, what are the problems that we are facing? Identify those. And then we might see people, young kids, perhaps grown-ups, whatever, focusing their attention on the specific sciences to solve those problems, because they would see that, okay, that is a contributing factor. An experience I've had, and I'll just share this with you. When I was at university, I had a friend of mine, and he studied, I think, was physics or some nuclear physics, something like this. He had this grandiose idea that, okay, I will go and work for one of the nuclear power plants. And he studied it, and it's good, and there were opportunities, but he did not get that opportunity. So he ended up doing something else. His little brother, who wanted to be like him, saw that and then went and actually studied something else. But the little brother actually wanted to study physics as well. And I think that was a bit of a lost opportunity, because there was no vision and of an opportunity. Then it kind of directed them to do something else. So if we can create that vision for people, then that's my last contribution.
No, that's well said. And I whilst you were speaking, I was thinking about sort of not just necessarily people returning to be able to sort of, assist with or contribute to the development of STEM, but also people who are, the diaspora. This is essentially what, some of us, are, that we can be tapped in, that sort of knowledge, or, can be tapped into. So, Nick and others from CARISTEM has actually done some work on the ground in St. Lucia with, training, Raspberry Pi. I think there was a session that was run last year. So, and that was sort of voluntary on their part. So this is, this is one of the things that, the Caribbean, countries can actually tap into, that knowledge, and that, the resources that exist out there, who are quite willing to be able to come and give support to the development of STEM in the Caribbean. So but yeah, thank you very much, Mickey, for joining us. I know it's very late, it's way past your bedtime in Belgium. We hope you join us for the next conversation. I'll make sure to send the information through to you. So thank you very much for joining us, and I know everybody else thanks you as well for your contribution. Until the next time, thanks very much.